So today we're diving straight into a wintry meal prep, and we're going to make a lentil soup with some really basic ingredients that I had on hand when I filmed this. This is a little while ago. I filmed this in my previous apartment, but we've got some herbs, we've got some carrots, we've got some lentils. You can make this soup without the potato, but I did have the potato on hand, so I was like, why not chuck some veggies in there that need to be used up? So we're going to start very simply by putting some oil in a medium-sized pot. The recipe for this will be linked below, by the way. I have modified it ever so slightly, but yeah, I think recipes are a really good place to start. So I've got my onion there. I had both brown and red onion on hand, so I'm just using up what I had in the cupboard and chucking in a little bit of garlic as well. I really like this particular brand if you live in Australia because it doesn't have any added sugar or anything else in it. It's just pure garlic. So turning the heat down ever so slightly here whilst those onions are cooking. And then we're going to coat that onion in a bit of tomato paste. You don't want your heat too high here because it could burn it a little bit. So we're just cooking that up and coating the onion. It just smells amazing, by the way, at this point when you make this recipe. Um, and then we're adding the vegetable broth, or you could use chicken broth if you wanted to as well. But I'm making this dish completely vegetarian today, and just adding a little bit of water as per the recipe instructions. And then we're just adding our vegetables as well. So I'm adding in my carrots and my potatoes, and then we're going to add our seasoning. Of course, you can modify this however you like, but I do like using fresh herbs where possible. And then you want to rinse and add your lentils to the recipe just here as well around this stage. I forgot to show you that. My camera battery decided to die at this point. But anyway, that's all my lentils, vegetables, all the ingredients in there. And then we bring that up to a bit of a simmer and just make sure that you get your lentils nice and soft, however you like that texture to be. Now, you could serve this up exactly like this if you wanted to, but it is a little bit lumpy. So it depends how you like your soup. At this point, you would also add in your lemon juice. I always have some lemon juice in a bottle in my fridge, but fresh lemon would obviously be beautiful as well. Now, I like this soup a little bit more smooth, so I'm blending it up, but not completely, just to make it a little bit smoother. This makes loads of portions, and it's a really big hit with us. And I'm going to show you, by the way, how I made this homemade bread as well. It's a dead easy recipe, so I'm going to show you that in a little bit. And now on to another favorite dish of mine. You can make this completely vegetarian or even vegan if you don't use eggs. So we're going to do a fried rice. So here I've got my eggs. I've got a little bit of milk that I will use to scramble the eggs. You can obviously use a non-dairy milk if you want. Normally I'd use soy sauce, but I had coconut aminos in the fridge that needed to be used up. I also had some prawns, and I have some cooked brown cold rice here. Fried rice is always best with cold pre-cooked rice. It's a great way to use up. You can also use those little instant rice bags as well. I'm going to use my garlic again, my ginger, and then I just have a big bag of mixed veggies in the freezer that I need to be using up. So start off very simply by using up most of that onion that I had lying around. Some of it I used for the lentil recipe that you just saw before. So yeah, just cutting that up fairly small because in fried rice, at least I don't like the onion pieces to be too big and chunky, but obviously cut it up to your liking. Um, by the way, watching this footage makes me remember how cooking in a tiny kitchen is so much more challenging. So that's why this footage is very up close to the pan. And I'm so grateful for the big kitchen that I have these days. But I did want to share these recipes with you because I have been cooking these for a really long time and they are my kind of go-to recipes. So my husband ended up using the milk you saw before for something else. So I actually used almond milk instead. All right, and you just scramble up the eggs however you like them. I'm going to go pretty light on the seasoning here and do salt and pepper because this is going to go in with a lot of other flavors. And I usually scramble my eggs till they're like 80 to 90% done, simply because they're going to keep cooking later on. So as you can see there, I've put my eggs to the side. And I'm just adding some oil, so I'm doing olive oil, sesame oil, and then I'll be adding other flavors very soon. So throwing my onions in there with the oil to get that all started. I've got fairly high heat here, but I would normally recommend at some point here that you lower the heat just a little bit. Again, using up the leftover onion that I had hanging around in my fridge that needed to be used up, and obviously some garlic as well. You saw that one in the earlier recipe. So just cooking this up, it doesn't need very long, and then I'm adding a little bit of ginger as well. Ginger is just really, really nice, and again, I like that particular brand because here in Australia, I find that a lot of the supermarket brands have a lot of added sugar and stuff. So if you do buy the supermarket stuff, just have a little look at what actually is in the thing. So my onion is looking pretty good at this point, and because I had prawns in the freezer, which is pretty rare, this is obviously a pretty fancy fried rice. Um, I don't normally do this dish with prawn. You can do it completely vegetarian if you want to, but I had these, I wanted to use them up, and I love prawn in kind of Asian style dishes. So just cooking these up, they're getting some beautiful fragrance from the garlic and all that sort of stuff. But as with any fish or prawn and things like that, you do not want to overcook them. So I cooked them for a couple of minutes there just to make sure that they had all that beautiful fragrant flavor in them. All right, adding a little bit more oil, and now we're going to cook up the rest of the stuff. So I threw in my bag of frozen vegetables. They're still frozen. I hadn't taken them out early enough to thaw them out. So they're just hanging out here in the pan, same flavoring already in it. So we're just going to let that soften and cook through, which won't take very long, but chucking the lid on makes it cook a little bit faster as well. So just letting that do its thing in there and give it a stir every now and then to make sure that it's thawed out. And now that my veggies are looking pretty happy and mostly cooked through, I'm going to be adding in my rice. So I cooked this rice earlier the same day, so it was cold. Now I use a fair bit of rice in this dish, in this particular recipe. You can reduce the amount of rice and increase your part of vegetable or protein or whatever you like. But the good thing about this is it's a really good meal preppy dish, and it makes a really, really big amount of lunch boxes, which can be really nice. So I've got my prawns sitting there, I've got my eggs sitting on the side, and now we're just really combining all of these things together. And this is obviously where you can add anything else that you like as well. Now, soy sauce you can use coconut aminos like I had on hand. I'm adding a little bit more sesame oil in this one as well. And I did have some oyster sauce. I would probably recommend more like a fish sauce than this one, but again, I had it in the fridge. I don't really know what we bought it for, but because I had the prawns going on as well, I thought this could add some nice flavor, which it did. So do experiment with whatever sauces and things you happen to have hanging around in your fridge that's got to get used up. We like our fried rice with a little bit of a kick, so I added in some chili powder there as well just to get that done. And then I'm just mixing the other things back in when I'm happy with the way my rice is looking and it's warmed through. And as per usual, I fill the pan up to the brim. Something about me and meal prepping, I can't help but filling every pot or every pan that I use. Maybe it's also meal prepping is really something I think for people who are a bit lazy. I will admit that I'm lazy because I prefer to cook as little as possible throughout the week. So yeah, just again combining all these things together. It smelled amazing at this point. It doesn't look like much, but my goodness, this was so tasty. So now we're ready to serve this up. I'm going to use some sesame seeds, some soy sauce, and some crushed red pepper flakes. And let's serve this up for some dinner. Turned out amazing. We both really loved this dish, and it made quite a few portions for lunches and dinners on other nights. So yeah, highly recommend this one. And you may have seen this recipe. I got this from Frugal Fit Mom here on YouTube. I have linked her linked her video where she makes this below if you want to check her version out. But I'm actually making a version with a mix of white flour and wholemeal flour. So again, the recipe will be linked below to her video. But I like to kind of make this a little bit more, I guess, healthy. You can use white flour, which is totally fine. But I had wholemeal flour on hand in my cupboard. Now, my husband, as you might know if you follow the channel, is gluten-free. So this bread is basically just for me. But it actually freezes really well as well. So very minimal ingredients. I'm using some dry yeast, some salt, and my flour, and we're going to add some lukewarm water very soon. Now this dough gets very kind of sticky, and that's fine. It's actually how it's sort of meant to be. So I'm starting with just a little bit of water and mixing the dough up, and having the rest of the water that the recipe calls for on the side. This will depend a lot on the temperature you live in, how humid it is, and that sort of stuff. So as you're mixing it in, just do little by little, because you will find that it can vary greatly. But now I've got my dough kind of combined and fairly sticky. And now we're going to leave this to rise in the bowl. I'm just sort of combining it a little bit more there. It will be very, very sticky. So in hindsight, I probably should have taken my rings off here. But this is what it looks like. It can even be a little bit wetter than this when I've made it other times. I do find though that this recipe is foolproof. So at this point, you want to let it rise somewhere in your home out of the way. And when you're ready to bake it, I've got my bread tin there in the oven warming up with the oven. So I've let this rise for about 12 hours. You can let it rise for about 8 is usually fine, but you can see it there that it's been rising and about doubling in size, and that's usually when you know that it's sort of ready to go. And now we're just gonna work this a tiny bit. We don't want to overdo it because this is a crusty bread. It doesn't have to look perfect and smooth. That's what I love about it. I've baked this a lot over the last few years, and I don't think I've ever, quote unquote, failed with this recipe. So if you are not a big baker of bread, I really encourage you to give this one a go because it is so easy and it goes really well with that soup. All right, so I've got my hot bread tin out of the oven, and I'm just going to put that straight in there, not do anything fancy with it, just leave it as it is, because I don't need it to be pretty and perfect. You can also use a Dutch oven for this. Now I don't have a lid, so I'm just going to cover it with just foil, which is easy enough. Most of us have that at home. So covering that up, and about halfway through baking, you want to remove the foil or remove the cover if you have a lid or something. Starting to look really good there, and pop it back in to finish baking. Hashtag, by the way, if you live in a small apartment, you might see that I have more things in the oven because I simply had nowhere else to store them when we lived in a small place. And this is how the bread turned out. I absolutely love this bread. It is so tasty. It was so yummy to go with my lentil soup. And I really hope you have a go at making this. It's quick, inexpensive, and very easy. I hope you enjoyed these recipes, and I look forward to see you in the next video where I'll be doing more meal prepping and dinner ideas.